Thanks for joining us Behind the Frontline, a podcast providing timeless solutions to everyday workforce and workplace challenges. Frontline Training Solutions is an express employment professionals company, strategically placed between the workplace and the workforce with professionals standing by, ready to combat your unique challenges. Learn more about what we do at frontlineon.com. All right, well, hello everyone again to Behind the Frontline. We are sitting here at the Express Employment Professionals International Leadership Conference 2024, live in Denver, Colorado. And we've already had so many fantastic conversations with leaders in this field about talent solutions and workforce management and the challenges are surrounding the workplace and the workforce around the country, and a lot of creative solutions.
That's right.
So we've seen some themes going on, but we're going to pivot for a second, and we are sitting here with our dear friend, Cheryl Moreno, who needs no introduction for some of you if you follow our webinars, and she is the Senior Director of Training for Oklahoma Temporary Services, and we are just so pleased to be sitting here with you right now.
I am so excited to be here and an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Cheryl's a dear friend of ours, and she's done so much for Frontline Training Solutions already, and in fact, one of the highest attended webinars that we've hosted.
Setting records.
You know, and I wanted to tell you this in person. Your webinar, we received a little feedback, and it was from a client in Canada, and they said, you know, Cheryl was fantastic to watch. The two guys, a little dull.
Yeah, we got some rather candid feedback.
I think we were related to a SNL skit.
Yeah, something like that. Like the Muppets or something. So.
They said, compared to Cheryl, it was night and day.
Yeah. We got to up our game here. Is what it is. Yeah.
Maybe a little more smiles, a little more enthusiasm.
Something.
Maybe. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
Cheryl,
funny.
I'd love to hear, what's your main focus right now?
Well, we're doing a lot of training, as you can imagine, but two of the things I am really passionate about that we're rolling out for our organization right now is, one, leadership, and we're rolling out a leadership program that's competency-based, so I'm really excited about that. The other thing that we're rolling out is values training. And we have, as an organization, recently gone back and defined our vision, defined our values, and really trying to instill that into our culture. And you think about our organization being 40 years old, but our offices never took the time to really establish a solid vision and defined their core values.
Wow.
And you think about that, it was like, oh my gosh, how in the world could that have happened? But it did.
Yeah.
And for us to go back now and define that, it's just been such a joy, and there's so much excitement around that's one of the things that I'm so passionate about right now.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, when you talk about values, sometimes you talk about unwritten values and written values. So you guys probably certainly had the unwritten values,
we most
right?
definitely.
So I'm interested kind of like how you took what people kind of understood as the values and translated that into something written down.
Yeah, we did a lot of interviewing with our senior leaders, and there was this unwritten values, because you have our senior leader, our founder, our CEO, Bob Funk, and this is who Bob is. This is how Bob would do business. And everybody knows that. But to actually have that written down in some kind of form that could then be passed down from generation to generation, that's what we were missing.
Yeah.
So we could all think about, well, what would Bob do? But we really didn't have that written down. So we started out by interviewing all the senior leaders, and then we started out by talking to Bob and talking about, okay, Bob, what's your core values? And we had him identify his top 10.
Okay.
And then from there, we started talking to all of our core employees. And we had the senior leaders do an exercise with their core employees, and they looked at Bob's 10 values, and they then talked about, well, if we had to choose 5 of those, right? What would be our 5? And we did that across the entire employee population.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then we took all that data and combined it to see what were those top 5 that bubbled to the top. And then from there, we kind of culled that down and decided, okay, these are our top 4.
Okay.
We took that back out then and had them kind of define that for us. Okay, so what are those values actually mean to you? And then we took it one step further and said, okay, if that value of grit was a person and it was walking around in your office, what would that
That's beautiful.
look like?
Wow. Okay.
So you're
good.
personifying the value.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
Okay. That's a good thought.
Yeah. So now we have our 4 values. We have them identified, we have them defined, and we have them behavioralized.
Oh,
Nice.
I love
So did you
that.
then, and I know I'm switching gears a little bit because I'm getting excited about this work. Defining leadership competencies, were they included or a part of the foundation, or was there any tie between your leadership competencies and the values that you guys defined?
Unfortunately, we kind of did that backwards.
Okay, okay.
So we identified our leadership competencies before we
Okay.
did the values work.
Okay.
But as we have started identifying, okay, what kind of people do we want to bring into our organization? Now we've incorporated those values into our hiring process.
Nice.
So our interviewing now incorporates values questions, behavioral-based values questions into our interview process.
Perfect.
And then along the way, when we do our reviews,
You're doing it all.
we're baking
That's
that
awesome.
into our process. So now those reviews actually go back and look at the values as well.
Yeah, and when we think about reviews, there's the what. I always talk about it as a what and the how. What you have to deliver are your goals,
Yes.
objectives, and all that stuff. How is how you behave,
Yes.
and they need to be built off of the values. So you have such a broader toolbox now that you've gone ahead and gone through the hard work of defining the values.
Right.
And you can start applying it to so many parts of the employee life cycle, and it really starts to embed and go across the organization.
Yeah.
Which is
And
great.
what I think is so wonderful about this is that it gives the leaders something to give employees feedback on and allows them to have something to coach to.
Yes.
And where before it was just so difficult for them, right? So they could coach to performance, but then the how
Yeah.
they performed was really ambiguous. So now we have something that we can coach on the how.
Right.
We just experienced that same thing.
Imagine that.
Imagine
Great
that.
minds think alike.
I know.
Yeah. So what was
yeah.
that like for you as you
Yeah.
went through that journey with
Oh
our
my
office?
goodness. It's like we had done a values exercise, but we were really ready for a refresh. And so thanks to Nathan's help, we knew that our values were the care promise, professional, approachable, compassionate, driven. That was all defined, but we hadn't defined the behaviors. And so sometimes what frustrated people about other people's actions or behaviors or approaches actually were now they're defined. So we now know if someone's exceeding expectations, if they're a 1, a 2, or a 3, or however you want to define it. But it's taken all of the ability now for us to give feedback to someone is it's right there. You're either demonstrating it or you're not, or you're really exceeding it, and let's see what you're doing so you can help others. But now it's embedded in our performance review process, which we do quarterly now, and so there's no mistaking
Right.
whether you're demonstrating our values. And then we can also help people, and then
Yes.
now people can even refer to it as like, hey, we really need to work on that. But it's just so much clearer, and the clarity, I think, actually gives people just a lot of more confidence in giving feedback and receiving feedback, and a lot more assurance in how I need to behave.
That's so good.
Yeah. Frankly, people want to know what's expected.
Yes.
And there's a little bit of peace of mind to know this is a value, that is
Yes.
important to us, and we're actually going to talk about it on a regular
Yes.
basis, right?
I love one of Brene Brown's sayings that she says, to be clear is kind,
Yeah.
and to
That's
be
right.
unclear is unkind.
Yeah.
And when you have your values defined and they're
Yes.
behavioralized so that we know what we're coaching to and able to give feedback that aligns to those values, it provides such clarity that now employees know this is the behavior that's acceptable,
That's right.
and this is the behavior that's going to align with our values, and if it's not, then I can work on these things.
Right. And you're
Exactly.
going to get feedback on it. You're going to be coached on it.
Yeah,
And we're
exactly.
going to get things turned around if
Yes.
we can.
Yes.
So I'm interested on the leadership competency side too.
Yes.
So did you go through a similar kind of competency sorting definition process?
We did.
Okay.
We did. I talked to the leaders. We went through interview processes to find out what was important.
Yeah.
And so sorting through those competencies, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay. And then do managers and leaders in the organization, is there an evaluation about those competencies too?
There
Okay.
is. So right now, our organization is very unfamiliar with getting feedback.
Okay.
So we're starting out very easy on the feedback, and we have a self-assessment that we're giving before they start the program. And in that self-assessment, they're analyzing their behaviors on these competencies, and their leader is giving them feedback on the
Okay.
competency. So we're not doing a 180 or a 360
Right.
at this point.
Right.
I think it would absolutely terrify them.
Sure.
And our organization's just not used to giving feedback,
That's right.
So we're just starting out small.
It's the way to do it.
Yeah. And then at the end of the training, then they'll take that self-assessment again.
Good.
And so hopefully we're going to see some growth
Yeah.
in those competencies and those behaviors around those competencies. And that's our goal, right?
Okay.
Is that we'll see some growth in those competencies.
So you built a leadership program around these competencies.
Yes.
Is it like a longer term program? What can you tell us about
Yeah,
that
it's
program?
a 9-month program,
Okay.
and it's
Okay.
actually broken into 3 buckets where we focus on the employee leader, the team leader, and the business leader.
Okay.
Nice.
All right. So different topics covered in those different
Yes.
phases.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Any other assessments that you're putting in there, or
We did a culture assessment.
Okay.
So we built that in as we rolled out this culture piece, and it's a self-assessment where they can really look at themselves and see how are they aligning with rolling out the vision and values.
Good.
Wow.
So that was really powerful, and we just did that a couple Thursdays ago.
Okay.
And that was so enlightening for them because they really got to think about how are they actually aligning with the culture, the values, the vision, and then how are they pushing that out as the chief communication officer and talking to their employees about not just the tasks that have to be done now, but to change that into transformational tasks, right? So it's about coming from the heart now, not just activities that have to be done,
Yes.
but
Wow.
how are we going to live our values so that we're changing people's lives? Because that's what our vision's all about.
you got to get leaders on that train.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're going to do some really heavy culture work, your value, defining values and vision and all of that, a lot of organizations, I think, miss that piece. You know, it gets developed and designed way up here by some people at the top level, and then just communicated down, and then we're just assuming that people are doing something with it or know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's so awesome that you're being really intentional and saying, let's evaluate how you're doing and let's give you some tools to actually support it, because without you guys, it's really not going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We have done 5 months of training as we rolled out our values. So we had this big rollout of our values initially, where the leaders did this video. We had all the senior leaders really describing one of the core values. And then Bob Funk, our CEO, actually described our vision.
Yeah.
And we had a company-wide Zoom call where we all got together. We sent this box out that had all these tchotchkes, if you will, but something that would support our values.
Yeah.
So we had conversation cards that had, if you wanted to use it in your team meeting, you just pulled out this conversation card that you could ask your team that would help them start to have conversations around the values. We had pens, we had
Good.
coasters, we had,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, just
So
so
intentional.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so intentional about it. And so that was an hour-long webinar where we just kind of launched the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then once a month, we took one of the values and just talked about, what does this mean? What does this look like in your office? And how can you start to demonstrate this in the work that you do? So
Okay.
we were really intentional. And now what we're doing in the second phase of the rollout is really talking about what are some activities that you can do intentionally in your office, and what are some examples of what that looks like. So
Okay.
we're rolling that.
Storytelling.
Yes, exactly.
So
So
good.
some
Right.
storytelling. And then one of the things that we did was we made these gold coins, like the military give out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So-
Challenge coin.
Challenge coins.
Yeah, I've got a couple of 'em.
Yeah. So we're giving out challenge coins. So when someone in the office demonstrates one of our
Ooh, I love
values,
this
Isn't that
idea.
interesting?
yes, we're
Yeah.
actually giving out a challenge coin, and the manager writes out what value they demonstrated, what behavior was it. So we're drilling down to what behavior actually was demonstrated. And they send that in. We get a picture for it to go on our website.
Okay.
And
That's a great idea, and
Yeah.
especially that's the purpose of them in the military, is because you see someone do something honorable or distinguished or stand out, and it's
Yes.
like a token of appreciation from a higher level leader.
Yeah.
Says, "I see you, I recognize what you've done,"
Yes.
and they usually in the military they'll give it to you in a handshake, kind of
Yes.
secret.
Yes.
So he'll come up to you and
Yeah.
shake your hand, and you'll walk away with this
Oh,
coin, and
how
you carry it in your
special.
pocket.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got about 12 of them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a fantastic tool to use.
So we wanted it to be something really special and for them to really pursue getting all 4 coins,
Yeah.
right?
That's really neat.
Yeah.
So you have one per value.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's so much power in whether you call them a token or a symbol. It takes on a lot of power and meaning in an organization. You're not just giving them out. And I love the fact that you're also drilling into why.
Yes.
One of the things that we do in Grand Rapids, every week we exchange 3 different awards or recognition things in our office, and it's always an explanation of why are we exchanging these. It becomes a part of your culture, and it's something that people really appreciate, and it tells the story of who we are as a team. It sounds like you're going to have that in spades.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think one of the things that we're planning on doing next is at our annual Christmas party, then we're going to have a year-end awards ceremony.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll actually look at who has the awards for each value, and then we'll have a committee that actually selects some of those that really stand out
Nice.
and have an award. And we'll have an Ambassador of Hope award, because that's what we've called them, as our
Yeah, I was thinking
ambassadors.
champion of hope right
yes,
there.
yes,
I'm
exactly.
going to roll out the
Yeah.
red
So
carpet
neat.
for everybody.
Yes, exactly.
That's fine.
Yeah. So we've got some other things in the works that we're still trying to work out the details of, but yeah.
Have you seen any success stories, or like heard some specifics around like some of the people that you're helping through with this?
Yeah, there are people that are so proud when they get those awards. Like, even though we put it on our website, they're taking pictures and putting it on Facebook,
Oh.
and they just are like, yes, I got this award, and here's why, and I'm so proud to work for this organization that recognizes me for the work that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. You start to see a team really rally around it. And what's so neat about this story, it's kind of soup to nuts, beginning to end.
What a legacy
You
story.
went through and you got the values defined, the values that were, essentially unwritten for so long, but now written.
Yes.
And then you embedded them into how do we select people? How do we measure their performance? I'm sure that there's an evaluation of those if you're considering promoting somebody, right? So now it's embedded fully into the processes that we have from a human resources perspective, and then also just into the culture through the recognition tool.
Yeah.
That's how you do something like this. Start to finish, you want it to have some legs. You got to have all of that there. So question for you, how hard was this?
Oh, that was my question, because this is a huge
It's a
change.
good question.
How
Yeah.
hard
Oh
was
my
it?
God.
Sounds like a lot of
Gosh.
work went into this.
There was it took us almost 2 years
Okay.
to
Wow.
do this.
Let's be
Okay.
realistic,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
It was not an easy task at all.
Mhm.
So when you think about all the interviews, all the conversations, the buy-in from the employee population group, it took a long time.
Yeah.
And then when you think about all the materials that we wanted to send out to the employee populations to support this, and then the training that's gone into the launch afterwards. I mean, it's been a good year and a half, 2 years for us to get this far.
Yeah.
One question I have for you is that, this is a considerable amount of change as
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And so even the hill of we're going to do a change with potentially people that thought that things were going along just fine. How did you maneuver that ability to be able to help people to come along with you as
great question.
you were getting this implemented?
When we first started the conversations, it was like, we know our values, and that's where we came from. Like,
Yes.
we know our values. But then, as they started to see the benefit of having the values written down, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, I could coach someone because the values were written down."
Imagine that.
Imagine that, and how much easier it was to have that coaching conversation because they could go back to the values, and it was like, this is the way that we do things around here. And it made that conversation so much easier, and it gave them a place to start from. It wasn't so hard after that.
Yes,
They
some
saw,
success.
they saw the benefit and the
Yeah.
success, and the light bulb went
Yes,
off.
yes.
And then they became the advocates of this change and helped move that change forward.
Yeah.
So plugging into your advocates would be something
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, it reminds me of this concept that came out from the corporate executive board maybe 7 years ago called open source change versus top-down change. And open source change really is all about getting people involved with the change. And they categorized it, especially the people, quote unquote, most impacted by the change. And that's going to be different for every initiative and change thing you're working through. But the thing you said earlier, a number of minutes ago now, that made me think you were on this was we talked to everybody in the organization.
Yes.
That step alone gets you so much further in the change process than almost anything else you can do. Certainly getting leadership aligned is another big part of it, but the fact that you were pulling in people, getting their opinions, getting them to weigh in, that is a huge part of managing change well.
Yeah, we really wanted to hear the employee population's voice and to have their buy-in from the very first.
Yeah.
And I think that was really part of them accepting it.
For
And,
sure.
Love
It was their idea.
It was their idea, exactly.
That's so good.
And the owners of it, the ownership piece is so key. Somebody's not telling me this. I actually developed it.
And we could then go back and tell them, you were part of this. This was what we heard from you.
Yeah.
And that was part of our messaging, too.
One more question, Nick.
Yeah,
Can I
go
ask
for
one
it.
more? Now I'm so curious. Is how did you decide the 10 to the 5 to the 4?
So it started with Bob's. So he identified his 10. And that it had to start with him, right?
Yeah.
He's the leader, so it all
Founder.
started with him. And then when we sent his 10 out to the employee population, then we allowed them to vote, and then
Okay.
that bubbled up to the top 5.
Okay.
Got it.
And then from there, we took those 5 and really 4, because we hauled it down to 4. And we then defined them, and and behavioralized them.
Yeah, so
It's a good
even
process.
giving people a chance to vote
Yes.
is
Yeah.
another part of that.
I know
Yeah.
that. I know.
Yeah.
The choice.
Yeah.
I like that you took his and then allowed them to vote on it. It keeps
Yeah.
it still very in line with
Yes.
the vision of the
Yeah.
owner.
So he
and leader.
didn't mind whatever we chose
Exactly.
because
Pick
they
what you
were all-
want.
Yeah,
Right.
they're all his.
It's still in alignment. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't
good.
know if we mentioned it. What's the name of this program?
Oh, it's just our
Just
vision, values, and culture.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. What is your key advice for any companies dealing with something like they need to go through this process with you? What's your
Yeah.
advice for them right now, other than to contact you?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your advice for them?
I would say have lots of conversations. Listen, but have lots of conversations. Start with your senior leaders, have conversations there, and then cascade that conversation down and get all your other employees involved in the process.
It's fantastic.
That's what it takes.
That's what it takes.
This is so good.
It is
Yeah.
so good.
Cheryl,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us again for another episode on Behind the Frontline, where we sat with Cheryl Moreno, our dear friend. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right, we will see you next time on the Frontline.